Okay, if you want to follow along in your book, we are in lesson 17 and we're dealing with solving by square roots. Now, we've actually gone over this a little bit, so it should be a little bit of a review. What I want you to do right now is I want you to look at this problem and see if you can answer A through D. Okay, so A says, what do you notice about the structure of the quadratic expression? It's right here. Gives it to you right here. What do you notice about it? The B is missing. We don't have a B. And the equation, what does the 4 represent? Well, if I was to plug in 0 for the t, what would I get? I should get 4. So isn't that its starting point? So this is the starting point, or the starting height. How do you know? Explain how you would use the equation to determine the time it takes for it to reach the floor. Well, h represents its height. Well, if it's on the floor, isn't its height 0? So I would set, set the equation. Ooh, I don't have room. Equal to 0. Sorry about that, guys. Now consider your possible solutions for t. Which values are reasonable? Well, if t is time, can't have negative, so wouldn't we end up with positive numbers? Okay, negatives would make no sense whatsoever. So we're going to look at this. There are 2 ways you can solve this. Now you could factor it, and that's this form over here on the left-hand side. This is the factoring method. So we have the factoring method here. So you would factor it. Interesting how they didn't take out the GCF first, but they would factor it. So let's solve that. So I would add the 4t to the other side and get 2 equals 4t. Divide both sides. Oops, I almost messed up. Divide by 4, and I get 1/2 is equal to t. So one of my answers is going to be 1/2. Then I take this one. I'm going to subtract 2 to the other side. Why? Because I wanted to. Divide by 4, and I get t equals negative 1/2. So the 2 answers I get from that are 1/2 and negative 1/2. Then we have the square root method. We set it equal to 0. All they did was add 16t squared to both sides of the equal sign. That's all they did. Then they divided both sides by the 16, got 1/4, take the square root. Well, boys and girls, what's the square root of 1? 1. What's the square root of 4? 2. That's the same as saying 1/2 and negative 1/2. Did we get the same answers? Yes. Which one did you like better? You have to decide that. Okay, so we're actually going to skip that part. We're going to come down here. Now remember, when we set an equation equal to 0, what we're actually finding? We're finding the x-intercepts, or the roots, or the zeros. All of those are the same wording. So I'm going to set this equal to 0. I've got 3 times x minus 2 all squared minus 27. I'm going to add 27 to both sides of the equal sign. I get 27 equals 3 times the quantity x minus 2 all squared. I divide both sides by 3. I get 9 equals x minus 2 all squared. I take the square root of both sides. When I do that, I get a positive and a negative 3 equals x minus 2. And you can rewrite it as x minus 2 equals 3, x minus 2 equals negative 3. So I get x equals 5 and x equals negative 1. So my answer, negative 1 and 5. And that's my answer to this question. Okay, let's try it again with this one. We'll do this color. I set it equal to 0. That's the number one thing, because x-intercepts mean that the y value is 0. That's the whole point of this, is to find the x-intercepts. We're solving. We're finding the solutions. We're finding the answers. So I add 20 to both sides. I divide both sides by 5 and I get 4 equals x plus 1 all squared. I'm going to pick this color. Take the square root of both sides of the equal sign. I get positive and negative 2 equals x plus 1. So I write my two equations. X plus 1 equals 2. X plus 1 equals negative 2. X equals 1. X equals negative 3. Now, boys and girls, do I have to write the two equations? No. If I can, I'm going to show you something over here. If I have x plus 1 equals plus or minus 2, I can still do this and say 2 minus 1 equals 1. Negative 2 minus 1 equals negative 3. And you can do it like that. Okay, so I want you to do number 6 on your own. So 12 and 2 equal x. Okay, we're going to come down here. Now all of them aren't going to work as nicely as that one is. And boys and girls, I see in the directions here, show your work. When you are solving, you're actually finding the y-intercepts. Now I want you to notice something. There's a difference between numbers 7 and 8, and then look at 9. Is 9 a set of parentheses, squared and equals a number? No. Number 9 is a trinomial. It means it has 3 terms. When it has 3 terms, you have to factor it, just like you did on your homework that was due today. So let's go ahead and have you do numbers 7 and 8. Okay, so 7 and 8. You didn't have to solve this time, like put in a 0 and do that. I apologize, you did solve. So you just take the square root from this part right here and you get x minus 2 equals positive and negative 4. You add 2 to both sides and get x equals 6 and negative 2. This one over here, you just start with take the square root of both sides. I get 2x plus 4. Nothing changes underneath or what's in the parentheses. Equals plus or minus 6. Now this one I'm actually going to split into 2 because there's a little more involved in it. but I didn't have to. It just makes it easier to see. So over here, I would subtract 4 from both sides, get 2x equals 2, divide by 2, and get 1. Over here, I would subtract 4 from both sides, get 2x equals negative 10, get x equals negative 5. So 1 and negative 5 are my answers. Now if I look at this one, this is a trinomial. That means I can't do it the way that I was just doing those problems. This one, I actually have to do the x method. AC would be 6, B would be 5. What are the factors of 6 that add to 5? Hopefully you can get 3 and 2. So 3x squared plus 3x plus 2x plus 2 equals 0. Ooh, doesn't equal y this time. It equals 0. So I'm going to have to do some solving with this. So I cut it here, take out a 3x, and I get x plus 1. Over here I take out a 2, and I get x plus 1. Are the two sets of parentheses the same? Yes, so I just write them down. 3x plus 2. Oh, now it's just like the problems that I did the other day where I found the zeros. So I split them up. X plus 1 equals 0. 3x plus 2 equals 0. This would get me negative 1. This one, 3x equals negative 2. So x equals negative 2/3. So my answer on this one, negative 1 and negative 2/3. Now sometimes we have something that looks like this, and that's just ridiculous looking. It has a negative 18 on the other side. The only way you can do these type, when it has these two x's on the left-hand side, you have to move this. This needs to move over to the other side of the equal sign for us to be able to do this problem. So let's move it. So we're going to add 18 to the other side of the equal sign. And we get x squared minus 9x plus 18 equals 0. Now it's just like all the problems we've already done. So I do a little x method, 18 and negative 9. So hopefully by now you like the one 18, or 18, sorry. So you have negative 3 and negative 6. So x squared minus 3x minus 6x plus 18 equals 0. Take out an x, you get x minus 3. Take out a negative 6, careful there, take out a negative 6, x minus 3. Are my two sets of parentheses exactly the same? They are. So x minus 3, x minus 6 equals 0. And guess what? I have to find my zeros. So x minus 3 equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0, so x equals 3 and 6. Okay. I want you to do numbers 13 and 14. Go ahead and do 13 and 14. Oops. Okay, look at these. 13 and 14. There you have them. Now when I'm teaching this, this is not my key. I would definitely have equals 0 on each one of these. In fact, let me go ahead and do those. So I would have 7, let me make it bigger, r squared minus 14r plus 7 equals 0. I would definitely put that 0 on and keep 0 consistent. So I'd take out a 7, I get r squared minus 2r plus 1 equals 0. Do my x method. What are the factors of 1 that add to negative 2? Oops, didn't write. There we go. Negative 1 and negative 1. So r squared minus r plus 1. So then I would have 7 parentheses or bracket. I would take out an r and I would have r minus 1. I'd take out a negative 1 and I'd have r minus 1 equals 0. So then 7, r minus 1, and r minus 1. Oh, there are 2 of them. Do I need to set them both equal to 0? No. I did not mean to do that. R minus 1 equals 0, so r equals 1. Now, can you set 7 equal to 0? No, because there's no variable. So there's no need to put 7 equal to 0 because 7 doesn't equal 0. And I'll go ahead and do this one. How about I change colors? So this would be 2d squared plus 5d minus 12. And as I look at that, see, I put the equal 0. I like it when there's an equal 0 so we don't forget that we have to solve. So on this, it would be negative 24, and it would be 5. So that would be 8 and negative 3. So 2d squared, plus 8d minus 3d, minus 12 equals 0. Take out a 2d and get d plus 4. Take out a negative 3 and get d plus 4 equals 0. So I have d plus 4 and I have 2d minus 3 equals 0. So d plus 4 equals 0. 2d minus 3 equals 0. So I get d equals negative 4. I get 2d equals 3. And d equals 3 over 2. Be careful, it's not 2/3. It's 3 over 2. So d, negative 4, and 3 over 2. Okay. Awesome. Now, there's one more that I want to do with you, and that's this one right here. Oh no, there are 2 more I want to do with you. Look at this. It's got this negative 5 on the other side. We can't have that. You have to have a 0 over there. So it's x squared minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. I'm not going to continue that one, but I will show you the answer in just a moment. Oh, in fact, let's see, x minus 3, x minus 8 equals 0. So x equals 3 and 8. And this one's an interesting one. Remember, you have to take out your GCF first. So if I take out my x, I get 7x plus 1. Solve it. X equals 0. 7x plus 1 equals 0. Subtract and set x equals negative 1/7. So x equals 0 and negative 1/7. I want you to do the rest of these. Go for it. Okay, subtract 4. Get x squared equals 25. So x equals plus or minus 5. Over here, divide both sides by 2. X squared equals 36. Take the square root. This one. Divide both sides by 3. X minus 3 all squared equals 9. Take the square root. Get x minus 3 equals plus or minus 3. Add 3 to both sides. Get x equals 6 and 0. Or 0 and 6. And last but certainly not least, I subtract 2. I get 5 parenthesis x minus 5 all squared equals 20. Divide by 5. Get x minus 5 squared equals 4. So x minus 5 equals plus or minus 2 because we took the square root of both sides. So I add 5. That was horrible. Add 5 and get x equals 7 or 3. And there you have it. Okay, again, remember, do your math chats.